The worst night of Prince's career started with 90,000 people laughing at his outfit and ended with him sobbing in a dressing room. But somewhere between the humiliation and the tears, something shifted. And 3 years later, the world turned purple. This is the story of how hate became fuel, how rejection became motivation, how one devastating night created the artist who would define a generation. The 9th of October, 1981, Los Angeles Coliseum. The Rolling Stones were in the middle of their massive Tattoo You tour, and they'd invited a relatively unknown artist to open for them, Prince Rogers Nelson, 23 years old, 2 albums under his belt, talented but unproven, black, flamboyant, and determined to make an impression. For Prince, this was the opportunity of a lifetime. The Rolling Stones were rock royalty. Their audience was massive, predominantly white, and fiercely loyal. If Prince could win them over, it could launch him into the stratosphere. But Prince didn't understand what he was walking into. Or maybe he did, and he simply didn't care. The Coliseum was packed wall to wall. 90,000 people. The energy was electric, beer flowing, joints burning. Everyone waiting for Mick Jagger to strut onto that stage. They hadn't come to see an opening act, especially not one who looked nothing like the rock stars they worshipped. Backstage, Prince was getting ready. He wore what he always wore, bright yellow spandex pants that hugged every curve, a purple sequin jacket, and black platform boots that added 3 inches to his 5'2" frame. His hair was perfectly sculpted. His makeup was bold. He looked like he'd stepped out of a fever dream, and he knew it. His band watched him nervously. They'd seen the crowd, seen the leather jackets and the Confederate flags. This wasn't Minneapolis. This wasn't Prince's people. Maybe we should tone it down. One of the band members suggested, just for tonight. Prince looked at him like he'd suggested cutting off his own arm. I am not changing who I am for anyone, ever. When Prince walked onto that stage, the laughter started immediately. 90,000 people took one look at this small black man in yellow spandex and sequins, and they decided he didn't belong. The jeering started before he even reached the microphone. Catcalls, whistles, mocking laughter that rippled through the crowd like a wave. Prince grabbed the mic. Hello, Los Angeles. The response was a wall of boos so loud it drowned out his voice. Prince didn't flinch. He signaled to his band. They launched into the opening number, a funk-driven song that was pure Prince, tight bass lines, explosive drums, guitar riffs that could cut glass. But the crowd wasn't interested in listening. They were interested in destruction. Get off the stage. Go home. Where is Mike? Prince kept playing, kept singing. His voice was strong, his performance fierce. He danced across that stage like he owned it, refusing to acknowledge the hostility pouring down from the stands. But the crowd wasn't just booing anymore. They were getting creative with their hatred. Someone threw a beer bottle. It shattered near the drum kit. Then another. Then a shoe. Then, and this would become infamous, someone threw fried chicken, actual fried chicken, at Prince. Because he was black, and in their twisted minds, that was the ultimate insult. The chicken hit Prince in the chest. Grease stained his purple jacket. The crowd erupted in laughter. Prince stopped mid-song, looked down at the grease on his clothes, looked out at the sea of white faces laughing at him. For just a moment, you could see it on his face, the hurt, the humiliation, the realization that these people didn't just dislike his music, they hated him. But he didn't leave, not yet. He kept going. The second song was worse. The crowd's hostility turned into something darker. Racial slurs started flying, words that can't be repeated, words that cut deeper than any beer bottle or piece of chicken ever could. Prince's band members looked at each other. This was dangerous, not just emotionally, physically. The crowd was getting more aggressive. Security was overwhelmed. People were rushing toward the stage. We need to get him out of here, the bassist said into his mic, trying to keep his voice steady while still playing. But Prince kept performing, kept dancing, kept singing like he could somehow win them over through sheer force of will. He made it through 3 songs of relentless booing, throwing, slurs, and hatred. 3 songs of watching 90,000 people reject everything he was. Then, finally, he stopped, stood center stage, looked out at the crowd one last time, and walked off. The crowd cheered. Not because they'd enjoyed the show, but because they'd won. They'd broken him. They'd driven him off the stage, and they celebrated like it was a victory. Backstage, Prince kept walking, past the crew, past his band, straight to his dressing room. He closed the door, sat down on the floor, and cried. Not quiet tears, deep, body-shaking sobs. The kind of crying that comes from being humiliated in front of 90,000 people. From realizing that no matter how talented you are, some people will never see past your skin color or your refusal to conform. His band members stood outside the door, not knowing what to say. They'd never seen Prince cry before, had never seen him show weakness. He was always so confident, so sure of himself. I am done, they heard him say through the door. I can't do this anymore. Hey? To an humble Des Dickerson, Prince's guitarist, eventually opened the door. He found Prince sitting on the floor, head in his hands, makeup running down his face. Prince, man, I am so sorry. They threw chicken at me. Prince's voice was hollow. They threw chicken at me because I am black, and they laughed. Des sat down next to him. Yeah, they did, and they're ignorant, every single one of them. I worked so hard for this. This was supposed to be my breakthrough, and they didn't even give me a chance. They saw my outfit, saw my skin, and decided I wasn't worth listening to. Their loss, Des said. But even he didn't sound convinced. The rest of the band filtered into the room. Lisa Coleman, Wendy Melvoin, Bobby Z. They sat in silence, watching their leader break down, watching the most confident person they knew question everything. Maybe they're right, Prince said quietly. Maybe I am too much, too different. Maybe I should just don't. Lisa's voice was sharp. Don't you dare finish that sentence. You are not too much. You are exactly enough, and anyone who can't see that is blind. Prince looked up at her. Did you see them? Did you see how much they hated me? I saw 90,000 people too ignorant to recognize greatness when it was standing in front of them. That is not a reflection of you. That is a reflection of them. Have you ever been rejected by people you hoped would accept you? Ever had your art, your identity, your very existence mocked by a crowd that refused to see your worth? That pain doesn't disappear. But sometimes, if you are strong enough, it transforms into something else, something powerful. Share this story with anyone who has ever been told they're too different, too much, too other. Because Prince's story proves that the people who reject you don't get to define you. Only you do. The Rolling Stones had invited Prince to open for 2 nights. After the disaster of night 1, everyone assumed he'd cancel night 2, cut his losses, go home and lick his wounds. Prince considered it, spent the entire next day alone, replaying the humiliation in his mind. Part of him wanted to hide, wanted to never set foot on a stage again. But another part, the part that had survived Minneapolis, survived the music industry's rejection, survived being told he was too black for white audiences and too white for black audiences. That part refused to quit. At 6 p.m. on the 10th of October, Prince showed up to the Coliseum again. His band was shocked. You are really going back out there? Bobby asked. I am not letting them win, Prince said. His voice was steady now. The tears were gone. In their place was something harder, something unbreakable. They're going to do the same thing they did last night, Wendy warned. Maybe worse. I know, and I am going out there anyway. Because if I let them chase me off that stage, I am saying they're right, that I don't belong, and I don't believe that. Not anymore. He walked onto that stage for a second time. The crowd recognized him immediately. The booing started again just as loud as the night before. But this time, Prince didn't flinch, didn't react. He played his set with a defiance that bordered on rage. They booed. He played louder. They threw things. He danced harder. They screamed, slurs. He stared them down. He made it through the full set, not because he'd won them over. He hadn't, but because he refused to let them break him twice. When he walked off stage that second night, he wasn't crying. He was furious. Prince didn't go home after the second show. He went straight to Sunset Sound Studios in Hollywood. Walked in at 3 a.m. still wearing his stage clothes, grease stains still visible on his jacket. The engineer on duty was surprised to see him. "Prince, it is 3 in the morning, you okay? Set up the recording equipment. All of it. I need to work." "Now, don't you want to rest?" Prince looked at him with eyes that had seen too much in the past 2 days. "I need to work now." The engineer set up the studio. Prince sat down at the keyboard, put on headphones, closed his eyes, and started playing. The music that came out wasn't like anything he'd made before. It was darker, more urgent, synthesizers that sounded like warnings, drums that felt like heartbeats, and a melody that seemed to say, "You tried to break me. You failed. Now watch what I do with this pain." He worked through the night, didn't sleep, didn't eat, just played and recorded and refined. By the time the sun came up, he had the skeleton of something big. Des Dickerson showed up at the studio around 7 a.m., worried about Prince. He found him still at the keyboard, eyes red from exhaustion. "Man, have you been here all night?" "They tried to destroy me," Prince said, not looking away from the keys. 90,000 people told me I don't belong, told me I should give up. Prince, so I am going to make something so undeniable that they have no choice but to listen. I am going to write music that forces them to see me, all of me, and they're going to love it, not because I changed, but because I made them change. Des listened to what Prince had created. Even in its rough form, it was powerful, raw, transformative. "What are you calling it?" Des asked. Prince smiled for the first time in 2 days. "I don't know yet, but whatever it is going to change everything. I am going to show them. I am going to show all of them." October 1984, Prince released Purple Rain, the album, the movie, the phenomenon. It sold 13 million copies, spent 24 consecutive weeks at #1, made Prince the biggest star on the planet. But it wasn't Purple Rain that had its roots in that terrible night at the Coliseum. It was the song that came before it. The song that started at 3 a.m. in a Hollywood studio while Prince was still wearing grease, stained clothes, and processing trauma through music. 1999. Released in 1982, 1999 was Prince's declaration of war against a world that tried to silence him. The opening synth line, ominous, urgent, was the sound of someone who'd been broken and rebuilt themselves stronger. The lyrics about partying like it is the end of the world weren't escapism. They were defiance. The album went platinum, then double platinum, then tripled. By 1984, 1999 had become a cultural phenomenon. The same rock fans who'd booed Prince at the Coliseum were dancing to his music in clubs. The same radio stations that refused to play him were putting him in heavy rotation. And in 1985, when the Rolling Stones released their own album, Prince's 1999 had outsold it. The student had surpassed the teacher. The opening act had become the headliner. Today, the story of Prince getting booed off the Rolling Stones stage is legendary, but what is often forgotten is how close he came to quitting that night. How 90,000 people almost destroyed one of the greatest artists of all time. Des Dickerson, who was there for all of it, said in a 2016 interview, "Prince was different after that night. Not broken, transformed. He took all that pain, all that rejection, and alchemized it into pure creative fuel. That is what 1999 was. Musical revenge." The members of Prince's band all tell the same story. After the Coliseum, Prince became obsessed with proving everyone wrong. He worked harder, pushed boundaries further, refused to compromise on anything. He had a chip on his shoulder the size of Texas, Lisa Coleman remembered, but it made him fearless. He'd already experienced the worst rejection imaginable. What else could hurt him after that? What happened at the La Coliseum in 1981 became a defining moment not just for Prince, but for how he approached his entire career. He learned something crucial that night. Acceptance from people who hate you isn't worth having. But forcing them to respect you on your own terms, that is power. Susan Rogers, Prince's longtime engineer, explained it this way. Prince never changed who he was after the Coliseum. He didn't try to appeal to rock audiences by becoming more rock. Instead, he made music so good, so innovative, so undeniable that rock audiences had to come to him. And they did. That is the lesson. Don't shrink yourself to fit into spaces that reject you. Expand yourself until those spaces have no choice but to make room. Prince wore even more flamboyant outfits after the Coliseum, even higher heels, even more makeup. He didn't tone himself down. He amplified himself. And the world that tried to boo him off stage ended up worshiping at his feet. The recordings from that 3 a.m. session at Sunset Sound Studio still exist in Prince's vault. Engineers who've heard them describe the raw emotion in those early takes. You can hear it in his voice. The anger, the hurt, the determination to transform pain into something beautiful. 1999 wasn't just a song about partying. It was a song about survival, about looking at a world that wants to destroy you and deciding to dance anyway, about turning the apocalypse into a celebration. The opening synthesizer line, that haunting, urgent sound, was Prince's way of processing trauma. The relentless beat was his heartbeat after surviving humiliation. The joy in the chorus was manufactured joy, the kind you create when real joy has been stolen from you. And it worked. 1999 became the song that defined the early 80s. Night TV played it constantly. Radio couldn't escape it. The same people who threw chicken at Prince were singing his lyrics at parties. In interviews years later, when asked about the Coliseum incident, Prince would say simply, "They tried to break me. Instead, they made me." If you've ever been rejected, humiliated, or told you don't belong, this story is your permission to turn that pain into power. Share it with someone who needs to know that the people who boo you today might be dancing to your song tomorrow. Because transformation isn't about changing who you are. It is about becoming more of who you are until the world has no choice but to listen. Here is the irony nobody talks about. The Rolling Stones, who invited Prince to open for them, defended him after the Coliseum disaster. Mick Jagger went on record saying Prince was brilliant, and that the crowd's reaction was shameful. But the damage was done. Prince never opened for anyone again, never played the role of supporting act. From that point forward, he was the headliner or he didn't perform. "The Coliseum taught me I don't need permission to be great," Prince said in a 1984 interview. "I don't need people to accept me. I need to accept myself. The rest will follow." And it did. By 1985, Prince was selling out arenas. By 1986, he was filling stadiums. The same venues that once booed him were now begging him to perform. In A Beautiful Twist of Fate, when the Rolling Stones toured again in 1989, Prince was invited to join them, not as an opening act, as a special guest, an equal. He declined. He didn't need their stage anymore. He had his own. But this story isn't all triumph, because what happened at the Coliseum left scars, deep ones. Prince developed severe stage fright after that night. Before every performance for years afterward, he would vomit from anxiety. The confidence he projected on stage was manufactured, built night after night through sheer willpower. He never forgot what it felt like to have 90,000 people hate him. Wendy Melvoin said, "It haunted him." Even when he was the biggest star in the world, part of him was still that 23-year-old kid getting chicken thrown at him. Prince rarely talked about the Coliseum publicly. When journalists brought it up, he'd deflect or change the subject. It was too painful, too personal, too close to the core of who he was and what he'd survived. But privately with his band, he'd reference it. "Remember the Coliseum" became shorthand for "remember what we're fighting against. Remember why we can't compromise. Remember why we have to be undeniable." Here is what most people get wrong about this story. They think it is about revenge, about Prince proving his haters wrong. And on the surface it is. But the real story is about something deeper. It is about a young black artist who refused to let a racist, homophobic crowd define his worth, who took the worst night of his life and turned it into fuel for the best work of his career. 1999 wasn't just revenge. It was reclamation. It was Prince taking back his power, his joy, his right to exist exactly as he was. It was him saying, "You tried to destroy me. You failed. And now I am going to show you what indestructible looks like." That is why 1999 still resonates today. Because it is not just a song about partying, it is a song about survival, about refusing to let hate win, about dancing in the face of apocalypse. The 9th of October, 1981, Prince walked onto a stage in front of 90,000 people who hated him. They booed him, threw food at him, called him slurs, tried to break his spirit. That night, he cried in his dressing room, considered giving up, came dangerously close to letting them win. But at 3 a.m., he walked into a recording studio and started writing. And what he wrote would change music history. 1999 wasn't just a hit song. It was proof that the people who try to destroy you don't get to define your story. That rejection is just redirection. That sometimes the worst night of your life is actually the beginning of your greatest transformation. Prince taught us that you don't overcome hate by earning the approval of people who hate you. You overcome it by becoming so undeniably yourself that their opinions become irrelevant. The band members who watched Prince cry in that dressing room also watched him rise. They saw him transform pain into power, humiliation into art, rejection into revolution. That night made Prince who he was, Des Dickerson said, not just as an artist. As a human being, he learned that he could survive anything, and that knowledge made him fearless. Today, when young artists face rejection or hatred, they're often told to change, to fit in, to tone themselves down. Prince's story offers a different path. Amplify yourself. Become more of who you are, not less. Make your difference undeniable. The La Coliseum still hosts concerts, big ones, but nobody remembers the Rolling Stones show from October 1981. They remember the night Prince got booed off stage, because that night, that terrible, transformative night, created a legend. 90,000 people tried to destroy Prince. Instead, they gave him the greatest gift an artist can receive: absolute clarity about who he was and what he needed to prove. 3 years later, those same people were wearing purple, dancing to his music, singing his lyrics, not because Prince changed for them, but because he refused to change at all. That is the power of staying true to yourself. That is the revenge of the authentic. That is what happens when you turn hate into fuel and pain into purpose. The world tried to boo Prince off the stage. Instead, he painted it purple, and it stayed that way forever.